The job of government was never to define morality. It was just to enforce morality. Romans 13 tells us that government and those in authority are supposed to be servants of God, agents of wrath to punish evil. Meaning, God has a standard of morality and He has put in place authorities to enforce those standards of morality in the nation. So that if you just decide, I'm going to kill somebody, the government says, actually, no, you can't do that. That goes against God's standard. That's the point of the government, to bring justice into a nation. It was never to define morality. The government was never to define these things, but merely to bring about God's view of justice. And Jesus, when he was here in Matthew 22, he gives us a very great illustration for us to really understand what really is the role of government. What is the role of government? The Pharisees and the Herodians, they came up to Jesus and they were trying to trap him with a question. Matthew 22. They said, "Teacher, we know that you're a man of integrity, that you teach the way of God." They're trying to trap him. They said, "Is it right to pay the tax to Caesar or not?" They wanted him to say, if they said no, then he would have been committing treason. If he says, no, don't give the tax, treason. If he says yes, well, then you're being disloyal to the Jewish community. So they were trying to trap him with a question. And Jesus, in all of his wisdom, it says that Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me?" He said, "Show me the coin. Bring me a coin that you give for your tax. Give me the coin." So they brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose image is on the coin? And whose inscription is on this?" And they said, "Caesar's." And he said to them, "So give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's." So he's establishing there is two realms of authority. There is the authority that has been given to Caesar, and there's the authority that has been given to God. So what belongs to Caesar? Well, his face is on our money, his face is on our coins, so the tax belongs to Caesar. We give it back to him. His face is on it, we give it to him. We give him our obedience. We obey the regulations and the civil things that he puts in place in the nation. In fact, in Luke chapter 12, a brother calls out to Jesus and is like, "Jesus, tell my brother to halve the inheritance with me." And I love it. It's kind of funny in the translation. I know it's just a translation thing, but Jesus in Luke 12 says, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" He's like, "That's not my job. I've already delegated my authority to the government to do these civil matters. Don't come to me asking about your inheritance. Go to the government for that." She's like, "Man, go to the government." So there are things that the civil government are supposed to do, a realm of authority. So Caesar's face is on our coins, so we give the tax. So then what belongs to God? If that belongs to Caesar, what belongs to God? Where has God imprinted his face? Where Caesar's put his face on a coin, where has God branded his image, his face? Do you know where God has imprinted his face? On every soul and every single human being. Meaning mankind belongs to God. Meaning the government does not get to define the value of human life. Caesar does not get to define whether life is sacred in the womb or outside of the womb. Mankind belongs to God, and only God gets to define the value of human life. But we've handed that responsibility to Caesar. We've given to Caesar what belongs to God. We've said, you know what, Caesar, you know what, government, you can decide whether life in the womb is valuable or not. You get to decide whether the elderly can be euthanized or not. You get to decide whether, the eugenics, and we can see whether this cell and this fertilized egg will turn out disabled or not. And you can decide if that's valuable. We have handed to Caesar what only belongs to God, the ability to determine human life, because mankind belongs to God. See, this is the problem with this atheist framework that our nation is fighting for. Right now, our culture in the West is fighting for an atheist framework. We're trying to push God out of our nations. Here's the problem, though. I would say to the atheist, okay, you don't want God in the nation? You don't want a Christian framework for your nation? Where will you derive your moral and ethics from then? That's my question for you. Where will you derive your version of morality? What will define what is good and what is evil for you as an atheist that does not believe in God? Because here's the problem with atheism. Atheism does not allow for objective morality to exist. In an atheistic worldview, there is no such thing as objective morality. As objectively this is evil and objectively this is good. Why? Because we're all just cosmic accidents. I'm a cosmic accident. There was a big bang and boop, I appeared. And I just evolved from a monkey. And you're a cosmic accident. It's just all a big accident, a big oops, big whoops. So what's wrong if I feel like murdering you? Why is that? I know you think it's wrong because you've been shaped with a Christian worldview. Think about it. Why is it wrong? If you're an accident and I'm an accident, why is it morally wrong to do that? If we're all just behaving according to the survival of the fittest, so we're all just acting in a way that ensures that we get ahead, we survive, and we reproduce, even if it costs somebody else, well then, rape sounds like a good idea. I will use you to get ahead, to multiply, to be the fittest. And if you're weak, well then you lose, because this is the survival of the fittest. Killing off the disabled sounds like a good idea in this kind of framework, because they're just taking up resources and they're not the fittest. See, the problem when we bring morality down to a biochemical reaction of the brain, and we say that what you believe to be good is just a chemical reaction in your brain, when we do that, what happens when we have different reactions in the brain? What happens if my biochemical reaction tells me that murder it's fine? And yours tells you, well, you should give to charity. Well, good for you, good for me. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. It's just chemicals in our brain. And then you might say, well, maybe society has constructed what we believe to be about morality. Maybe it's socially constructed. Okay, let's play that out. What happens when society gets it very wrong? What happens when a whole society decides, you know what, I don't think it's wrong to gas the Jews? What happens when you're in Nazi Germany and all of us as a society agree there's nothing too immoral about that? There has to be objective morality. Relative morality is not moral. There has to be a being that stands above us that says, even if this goes against your personal interest, that is wrong because I say so. And the reason you and I both know that murder is wrong is because you're not killing a cosmic accident. You're killing a human being made in the image of God. And to sin against mankind is to sin against God Himself. That's why we know that it's wrong. You can't just abuse people. You can't determine the value of human life because God has placed His image on them. They've been branded in His image. So what does that mean? It means that Christians, we have always been pro-life. Throughout all of history, we have been pro-life. We reject atheism and we reject the view that you and I just appeared because of a lightning strike. We say no, that person is inherently valuable because they're made in God's image. And that's why it was the Christians that fought against infanticide. It was the Christians that fought against the burning of widows in India. It was the Christians that fought against human sacrifice. It was the Christians that have always been pro-life, fighting against the senseless murder of human beings. And I ask you today, church, I'm asking you today, will you continue doing what we as Christians have always done, and that is to fight for life? I don't care if you're in the womb or outside of the womb or an elderly person or a disabled person. I don't care. You're inherently valuable because you're made in God's image. I will fight for life. If the Christians don't fight for life, who will? You think the atheists and the evolutionists will fight for life? Look at history. It has always been the people of God that fight for the sanctity of life. We must give back to God what belongs to God, and that is He alone. He alone determines the value of human life. God alone. Caesar does not determine the value of human life. The government does not determine the value of human life. If we just say, you know, it's not my problem, I'll let someone else speak about it, who will? If the Christians don't fight for the sanctity of life based on the Word of God, who will? Who will? You're leaving a moral vacuum in an atheist nature. You're leaving a moral vacuum in our society. And only the Christians ever fight for life. But you know what? No, abortion is political. It's too political. I'm gonna stay out of that one. Well, you know, one thing I get all the time whenever I post about abortion is people will say, you know, I'm a Christian, so I personally would never get an abortion. Obviously, it's wrong. It's murder. I'm a Christian, so I would never get an abortion. But who am I to tell somebody else what to do? Who am I to dictate what someone else does with their body? you know, I personally wouldn't gas the Jews, but who am I to dictate what the Germans and what Hitler wants to do? Do you hear yourself? What do you mean, who am I? People can sin and do whatever they want, but if you want to harm somebody made in the image of God, that is my place to speak, and I will defend life. And it is the Christians who will abolish abortion. And one day in 200 years, when we look back at this and see that this was just another Holocaust, I'm going to make sure that I was on the right side of history saying, I fought for the lives of the unborn. I spoke for those who are voiceless, and I always and will always stand up for the sanctity of human life. We will abolish abortion. Christians will abolish abortion. No other body of people will do that. We will do this.
Hey everyone, I got big plans coming up for this channel. More commentary, some interviews, and eventually it's going to be to go to biblical sites and do videos there on the history of the Bible. We're talking Sodom and Gomorrah, Mount Sinai, walking Jesus' footsteps, and there's two things I need to do that. One, of course, God Almighty, and the second one is you, so hit that subscribe button.